Welcome to the Mixed Signals Masterclass. In this masterclass, we will be covering what the telltale signs of mixed signals are, how to change our reaction to mixed signals, how to soothe anxiety that stems from mixed signals, as well as some additional resources to help on the healing journey. To kick things off, I'd like to just introduce myself. My name is Alexandra Velez. I'm a behavior designer at My Secure Era. For the last 10 years, I've read 400 books on the topic of personal development, and I'm on a mission to help people improve their emotional intelligence and relational intelligence. I am an integrated attachment theory coach who specializes in neuroscience. I've been featured in publications like Insider Weekly, Women's Week, and Women's Insider. All too often, mixed signals are most visible in the early stages of dating. It could be that you start to talk to someone through a dating app, and after a match happens, the messages begin. And this is where those early conversations are most vulnerable to mixed signals. It's all too easy to think about, do I like them? Do they like me? Is it mutual? Is this going anywhere? Are they starting to pull away? It feels like we are playing the adult version of he loves me not. And we're looking at text messages as potential signs that, yes, it is mutual interest. But let's say you're arranging those initial dates and you ask a simple question like, hey, are we still on for tonight? And then they respond with something enthusiastic and positive. But then the follow-up message says something ambiguous or vague. And so we can find ourselves trying to reconcile two different ideas. On one hand, they're interested, but on the other hand, we're seeing signs that maybe they're not. This is a mixed signal. So then the mental games begin. Do I act like this doesn't bother me? Do I tell him that I feel like he's leaving me hanging? Do I tell him something more direct, like, I'm going to need an answer, yes or no? This is the mind at work with filling in the gaps and leading to those moments of, I just don't know what to say in response to something vague. Let's now pivot towards recognizing the vast number and types of mixed signals, because once you understand how mixed signals plays out, you can start to understand when you are receiving mixed signals in greater depth. The first type of mixed signal we see is the gap between actions and words. Let's say they do one thing, but they do something else. This type of inconsistency can tell us there's a lack of integrity because their words and actions don't line up. With hot and cold mixed signals, we see on some days they're showing interest, on some days they're not showing interest. And it could create that sense of instability where you don't know where you stand because you're getting hot and cold messages. The third category of mixed signals is how they behave in public versus how they behave in private. Sometimes you could see that when you're together on a date, they're enthusiastic, attentive, responsive, caring. But then when you're by yourselves, you see a shift in their behavior where maybe they're not as kind or as generous. And then the opposite can happen also, where when you're together, it's wonderful, magnetic, and private, but when you go in public, they act disinterested or distant or as though they don't want to be seen with you. So this is another category of mixed signals. The next one is how they perceive the future. Let's say they want to take you on this amazing vacation in a few months, but in the short term, they can't organize a date for this week. There's a gap between the promises and the actions in the present. Next, we have the gap between emotional and physical. Some partners might feel totally comfortable with physical intimacy, but not emotional intimacy. When it comes to talking about emotions, they just don't feel comfortable with this. They'll put their walls up, and you realize that you can't reach certain aspects of their emotional health because it's guarded by their own armor. The third type of mixed signals is secure versus insecure. When someone is letting an insecure attachment style govern their reactions, they can easily be knocked out of their window of tolerance, which means you'll see classic patterns like fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Any kind of friction in the relationship gets them off balance. They can't really regulate in a way that's healthy where they can honor their truth, but also honor the relationship in a way that's healthy and constructive. Let's now compare what mixed signals versus clear signals look like. These can play out in different scenarios. Like, for example, when it comes to making plans, if someone is giving you wishy washy answers, like maybe, that's a mixed signal. If they're saying they're interested, but then they reply that they can't meet you because they're just really busy, that's a mixed signal. If you feel like you're saying to them that you're fine when you're not, that's a mixed signal. If you are noticing that they don't follow through because their behavior tends to be flaky, that's a mixed signal also. If an argument emerges, are they saying that they're fine, but actually they're not fine? That's a mixed signal also because we see a gap. And then we see whether or not their affection is hot or cold. That's a mixed signal. Now, if we flip our focus back to what is a clear signal, clear signals have a common thread within them in that when you receive the message, you know that it was thoughtful, considerate, and specific. So if we go back to our earlier scenarios, when it comes to making plans, instead of saying maybe or I'm busy, it might be something specific like, how about tomorrow after 6 p.m.? That at least gives you a day and time to start a conversation to work off of. Next is interest level. If someone's not interested, it's better for them just to say, I don't want to meet, than to give an excuse like I'm busy when the truth of the matter is they just don't want to meet. When it comes to boundaries, you don't have to pretend that you're fine with something when you're not. You could just clearly communicate, I don't want to do that. Can we try something else instead? When it comes to follow through, a clear signal has integrity because it communicates and then acts upon what was discussed. So the follow through is consistent when you have clear signals. If an argument emerges during a conflict, instead of pretending that everything's fine, a clear signal would say back something like, my feelings were hurt. Can we talk about it together? A clear signal also has consistent care when it comes to affection. One of the songs that perfectly captures mixed signals is the song Hot and Cold by Katy Perry. We see the extremes, the duality, hot, cold, in, out, up, down. When you are on the receiving end of mixed signals, it feels like it is like a roller coaster because you are seeing behaviors that are contradictory. Let's now take a deeper dive into what's driving those mixed signals. It comes down to three things: emotional unavailability, insecure attachment style, and relationship goals. Emotional unavailability is a twofold kind of problem. It represents the inability to create and to keep an emotional connection. There are many factors involved for us to why someone is emotionally unavailable. Two main drivers are unresolved trauma and the fear of vulnerability. The second factor behind why people send mixed signals is because they possess an insecure attachment style. All too often, when someone has an insecure attachment style, they have specific fears, insecurities, and emotional injuries that negatively impact how they connect to themselves and how they relate to others. The third thing we see is that those that send mixed signals are often missing essential relationship skills. They may struggle with vulnerability, reciprocity, with relationship repair, with communicating with their partner. And when these relationship skills are missing, it's no wonder that they may struggle with maintaining a healthy relationship. When put together, their ability to love and be loved is limited by their emotional health. Their behavior shows you their capability. It's not proof of your worth. Let's now begin to change how we respond when we see mixed signals. All too often, what happens is We feel like we want to give them a chance, the benefit of the doubt. We may lean on hope, see their potential, or hope that they could be the one, provided we are more patient around it. When we look at mixed signals, there are two stories unfolding: what we see on the outside, what we see on the inside. On the outside, mixed signals could feel like we don't know where we stand with them. We can't control if they're interested or not interested. We are afraid that we might get their disapproval. We don't know if they're comparing us to other people. We don't even know if they want exclusivity. And all that tends to drain our energy. But on the other side of the coin, we see that mixed signals is impacting us on the inside through how we think, what we feel, how we explain things, the assumptions that we make. And naturally, not only does this play out in our thoughts, but it also plays out in our body through sensations. And when you put all this together, what we see on the inside is connecting to our own core wounds. What we see below the surface line is connecting back to emotional injuries. The reason why mixed signals hurt so much is because it's tapping into a pain point. And how long and how much pain we experience depends on the emotional injuries we're already carrying before those mixed messages began. Let's look at the levels of emotional pain as it relates to mixed signals. With level 1, we see surface level injury, such as he didn't text back, and the mind fills in that gap with, maybe I said something wrong. With level 2, we have a deeper trigger that's activated. It could sound like, every time they go quiet, I get nervous. I think they're losing interest. With level 3, we start to see a behavior impact to the emotional injury. Maybe if I pretend that I'm fine, maybe they just won't notice and they'll actually like me even more because I'm easygoing, going with the flow, no pressure. At level 4, we're seeing an emotional wound. And it could sound like a story or an assumption like love always leaves. Core wounds are the telltale signs of an insecure attachment style. It basically represents an emotional injury that was imprinted on us, and it ultimately shapes our identity in such a way where how safe or how much self-esteem or how lovable we think we are in relationships goes back to these unresolved core wounds. The reason why some of these core wounds are so strong is because they are ultimately connected to some of the most painful past memories from earlier relationships. These are the kinds of emotional injuries that cannot be forgotten because they cut so deep. When you are experiencing mixed signals, there are several core wounds that come online. When you look at these core wounds, you'll notice many of them are fear-based. Let's start off with the first one, fear of abandonment. This is that state of hypervigilance where you're scanning for signs that they're interested or not interested. And you're trying to prevent them from losing interest at all costs because you want to keep this connection going. There's also the fear of rejection, where you're overthinking, second guessing yourself, and wondering if anything you did caused them to change their level of interest. Defective. This is where you start to blame, shame, criticize yourself because something you think you did makes you unlovable. Fear of betrayal. This is where in your past you have been on the receiving end of lying, cheating, manipulating, and therefore you don't trust other people because your past experiences have injured through betrayal. Fear of unpredictability. When you see that someone is pulling away or giving you mixed signals, you could switch gears and go into, what can I say or do that will make them like me more? That's what people pleasing basically is. Changing parts of who you are and maybe even erasing parts of who you are as a way of gaining connection. We can often see that people pleasing is fueled by anxiety. The next core wound that's activated by mixed signals is emotional neglect. This is where you think that in order to have love, you need to sacrifice your wants, needs, values, goals, so that you can fit into what they're capable of. In this scenario, you may feel like you have to settle for less, become smaller to fit in, or you have to accept worse circumstances just to have the relationship. All of this is a form of emotional neglect where you are self abandoning, self betraying, and reducing yourself in order to make the relationship work. This is a question that comes up over and over online. And does he like me? They're often weighing in the balance. Here are the signs he does. Here are the signs he doesn't. Which one is it? We're now going to take a deeper dive because when you're doing this analysis, ruminating, thinking, processing, it's way too easy to have confusion around whether or not they're interested. But as we take a deeper dive into this, we can start to get some clarity. So you don't have to do the mental gymnastics of whether or not they like you or not if they're giving you mixed signals. When someone is interested, you will see consistency, clear communication. They'll follow through. When you're on a date with them, you'll notice and feel that they're fully immersed in the experience. They're not distracted. They're not pulling away. They're not showing indifference. When they talk to you, they're asking questions with sincerity, showing their curiosity, putting in effort for the conversation. When you see that not only do they take interest in talking to you, but they remember things that matter to you, show up with thoughtful gestures, you can tell they're interested in you. And then if something bad happens, they know how to talk about it with care and safety so that even if there's tension, they know how to resolve it in a constructive way. And when you look at the heart of it, when someone is interested, your inner state of mind feels at peace because you know in your mind you are valued. Your value is not in question. Where you stand with them is not in question. You feel a sense of peace because you're in a dynamic where the love is healthy, genuine, and secure. Now, let's flip that over to the other side of the spectrum, how someone behaves when they're not interested. You'll notice a lack of effort. This means they'll take their time to reply to text messages, won't really follow through with a conversation, just letting it fade or ghosting. When it comes to dates, they'll either cancel, reschedule, never show up, or just decide they don't want to actually go on the date after all. If you meet up with them and when you're on the date, they act distracted, they're checking out other people, they're on the phone, they're still on dating apps, playing and matching with other people while on the date, they're not interested. If you notice that the conversation stays superficial, like it never develops beyond small talk, that's a telltale sign they don't want to go deeper. And maybe they don't feel capable of sharing information that isn't small talk. The next thing you'll notice when they're not interested is they don't really acknowledge your effort. Next, you'll see that if a problem emerges, rather than talk about it in a constructive way, they'll deny any wrongdoing, downplay their behavior, shift the focus back to you, and either withdraw from the conversation or just give up. So we see negative reactions to arguments or conflicts. And this next part is the defining factor. You know that someone ultimately isn't interested is when the end result leaves you feeling unsure of where you stand with them. Confused is another big indicator. If you have doubts in yourself because of them, or you find yourself doubting them because of their behavior, these are all telltale signs that they're not interested and they might just be stringing you along, or for whatever reasons unknown, they are giving mixed signals, but they're not 100% interested and invested in the relationship. Now that we know what those telltale signs are, they're not actually interested, it's time to bring some relief through self-soothing. Because when you find that you are receiving mixed signals, it's entirely natural to feel hurt, disappointed, let down, or still feeling that sense of anxiety. We're human, and at the end of the day, even though we could consciously and logically know, hey, it's a mixed signal, it doesn't remove the impact of their behavior. So we must turn to ourselves and to start to rebuild our inner sense of peace, calm, and safety. One of the things that can be immensely helpful is just giving ourselves a sense of clarity and separating their behavior from our identity. In the words of Taylor Swift, I keep my side of the street clean. Even though we didn't give a mixed signal, we don't dish it out either. And it also means that we don't internalize their behavior as a reflection of our self worth. Their behavior reflects them, and we don't make assumptions that hurt us in the process. Taking the time to make a clear separation between their behavior and our identity is an important way to disconnect from those negative assumptions and insecurities that try to fill in the silence. Through acts of clarity, we can give ourselves a sense of closure. When we look at mixed signals, on the inside, we can control the care we give ourselves, how we comfort ourselves, how much compassion we're able to give to ourselves based on our circumstances. And because we know ourselves best, we know how to intervene to help us process. Outside of our sphere of influence, the things on the outside, we can't control. If they're giving conflicting interest, if they're acting careless, if they only reach out when it's convenient, if they're comparing us to other people, or they just choose to stay in their comfort zone, that's on them. We can give ourselves the comfort we need, give ourselves clarity, and most importantly, take care of our mental health as we process mixed signals. Another essential part of rebalancing after mixed signals is to tap into community. All too often, what happens is there's so much silent suffering that happens in the dating process where it's important to tap into community when we are on the receiving end of mixed signals, because so much of dating can feel like a private experience where suffering and pain just happens privately because there's fear of judgment, fear of blame, fear of criticism. And it's a struggle to be transparent around what's happening, who you're seeing, or to being trusting with people because you don't know who can actually be a safe space for what you're going through. This is why having safe people inside of a psychologically safe community can be so healing and restorative because you know that on some level, the pain you're experiencing is relatable, a common experience, and somewhat universal. Let's dive into the neuroscience of things. Why is community so helpful? The amygdala, which is actively scanning for threats. When you're in healthy relationships with people who are kind, supportive, and understanding, the amygdala starts to quiet down for those clues of, does he like me? Does he not like me? As a result of having connections that are safe, you're able to think clearly, feel like you can respond more intentionally, or just feel more centered and grounded inside of yourself. Next thing you can do is tap into your favorite songs. When you listen to music you truly love, dopamine and endorphins are released in your brain. You know which part of the song is your favorite part, and that part excites you. And when you sway to the music, the song itself is rewarding to listen to, and it's feeding you from the inside out to release those dopamine and endorphins. Listening to music is a way of restoring safety, even your sense of motivation, and it's a form of pleasure. Listening to music does your brain and body a world of good. Sensory grounding is another way you can rebalance your mental health after mixed signals. It's typically an activity that fully engages your senses. In this case, something like adult coloring books can help because they give you novelty in different ways through color, details, texture. When you're fully immersed, fully present in this kind of activity, it helps to shift your mind away from the anxiety by redirecting your focus. When you're able to do sensory grounding activities, you're able to relax, quiet your mind, and mentally reset. One of the activities that engages your hippocampus is journaling. As you write about your life experiences, your love stories, it helps with understanding your experiences, shifting the meaning in a constructive direction, and it helps us to come to terms with our own experiences. One of the activities that actively engages your hippocampus is the act of journaling. As we go about writing about our life, our love stories, it helps us to add a deeper level of meaning, helps to crystallize our understanding, and make better decisions in response to our lived experiences. By journaling, you're able to gain clarity, regain a sense of control, and often emerge with new solutions to problems. The first takeaway from this masterclass is this: mixed signals is a reflection of their emotional health. The second takeaway from this masterclass is this: the reason why mixed signals hurt so much is because they are often tapping into deeply held emotional injuries. The third takeaway is soothing yourself is an important step towards minimizing the impact of their mixed signals. If I could leave you with one thing you don't forget as a result of this masterclass, it's this: independent of their behavior, you are completely lovable. One of the kindest things you can do is not let insecurities, fears, and core wounds fill in the silence to justify or explain their actions. Let's now dive into some resources that could help you with learning how to create healthier romantic relationships. The first resource I want to share with you is the Availability Awards. This ebook describes the 16 different types of people who are not emotionally available to co-create a romantic relationship. By reading this book, you can understand how to prevent heartbreak and which people to avoid so that you don't become emotionally connected with the wrong individual. The second resource is called the Love Pattern Report. This is a diagnostic that helps you to further understand which emotional injuries and core wounds are shaping your decisions as you pick who to date and how you connect with them. By understanding your emotional habits on a much deeper level, you're able to understand what the essential next steps are in your healing journey as you move from insecure attachment to secure attachment. The third resource is the Love Story Session. This is a private one-on-one conversation where you and I could talk one-on-one to further understand how your love life is unfolding and what your experiences have been so that you can decide what the next step is as you move through a romantic relationship. Thank you so much for joining me in this masterclass today. I encourage you to save this video so that when you are on the receiving end of mixed signals, you don't forget what those things are and you won't invest further into the wrong person. Next time someone sends you a mixed signal, you can pull up this masterclass once again to get to the heart of it and answer the question, does he like me? And end the confusion fast. I encourage you to subscribe to this YouTube channel because more masterclasses are coming that will help you to build secure, lasting love. By tuning in, it just might change how you date.